Vaishnavamscha Shrirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Hari Ram Sankirtan ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 7, Chapter number 6, entitled Prahlad Instructs His Demoniac Schoolmates. And today we're reading from text number 27. Srila Prabhupada traveled all over the world teaching Krishna consciousness. And there were 3 sections of the Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada quoted from the most. One section was the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where the sages are asking Sutta Goswami different questions and he's giving different answers. So there are so many verses Srila Prabhupada quoted from that section. The second most quoted section of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the beginning of the 5th canto, where Rishabdev is teaching his sons. And there, from those chapters, Srila Prabhupada repeatedly quoted. And this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prahlad Maharaj is giving instructions, is the 3rd most quoted section of Srimad Bhagavatam. So very, very important section. On the first day, we talked about Srila Prabhupada as the living Bhagavatam because he was a visionary. On the second day, we talked about Srila Prabhupada as the living Bhagavatam because he was an innovator. Then yesterday, we talked about Srila Prabhupada as the living Bhagavatam because he was the ideal disciple. And today, on the final day, we'll talk about Srila Prabhupada as the living Bhagavata because he was the best teacher. The whole world is starving because they have no knowledge. There's no understanding. And therefore Srila Prabhupada was teaching Bhagavatam and teaching all the instructions of the Bhagavatam. So this is Srila Prabhupada's glory. He gave us these books. One time, Prabhupada said to Dhananjaya Prabhu, "It's too late." So he was thinking, well, what does that mean? So Prabhupada said, "It's too late." So still he couldn't understand what Srila Prabhupada was trying to tell him. So Prabhupada said, even if tomorrow all the devotees left, even if tomorrow all the temples closed down, and even if tomorrow the Krishna consciousness movement came to a complete standstill, Prabhupada said, it's too late. Because all the books are out there. And one person is going to pick up one of those books and start the whole thing again. So this is the glory of the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books, that all the books are out there. Some person is going to read it and their heart is going to be transformed and they're going to start it all over again. Therefore, Prabhupada said, it's too late. So this is very beautiful. So, but this knowledge is not easy to understand. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Sa evaya maya tedya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam yatadutamam. Krishna says this knowledge is rahasya. Rahasya means it's very confidential. You may say, how is it confidential? Just now you said the books are everywhere. Yes, the books are everywhere, but it doesn't mean everyone can understand. Because to understand the knowledge, bhakto sime sakha cheti, you have to be a bhakta, you have to have devotion, you have to have some love, you have to have a heart which is not envious of Krishna. Therefore, the devotees know expertly how to explain the knowledge and how to prepare people's hearts so they can understand the knowledge. So here we're reading a verse. Prahlad Maharaj is giving all this amazing knowledge to his school friends. Remember, Prahlad Maharaj is only a 5-year-old child, but he's speaking like a scholar. And then his schoolmates ask him, where did you learn all of this? So this is Prahlad Maharaj's answer. Please repeat after me. Jnanam tadetadamalam duravapamaha Narayano narasakha kila naradaya Ekantinam bhagavatastadakinchananam Padaravinda rajasa pluta dehinam syad Jnanam tadeta damalam duravapamaha Narayano narasakha kila naradaya Ekantinam bhagavatastadakinchananam Padaravinda rajasa pluta dehinam syad Jnanam tadeta damalam duravapamaha Narayano narasakha kila naradaya Ekantinam bhagavatastadakinchananam Padaravinda rajasa pluta dehinam syad Mataji's. Jnanam, knowledge. Tat, that. Etat, this. Amalam, without material contamination. Duravapam, very difficult to understand, without the mercy of a devotee. Aha, explained. Narayana, Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narasaka, the friend of all living beings, and especially human beings. Kila, certainly. Naradaya, unto the great sage Narada. Ekantinam, of those who have surrendered exclusively to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tat, that knowledge. Akinchananam, who do not claim any material possessions. Padaravinda, of the lotus feet of the Lord. Rajasa, by the dust. Apluta, bathed. Dehinam, whose bodies. Shyat, is possible. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the well-wisher and friend of all living entities, formally explained this transcendental knowledge to the great saint Narada. Such knowledge is extremely difficult to understand without the mercy of a saintly person like Narada. But everyone who has taken shelter of Narada's disciplic succession can understand this confidential knowledge. Purport. It is stated here that this confidential knowledge is extremely difficult to understand. Yet it is very easy to understand if one takes shelter of a pure devotee. This confidential knowledge is also mentioned at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam saranam braja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. This knowledge is an extremely confidential secret, but it can be understood if one approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the bona fide agent, the spiritual master in the disciplic succession from Narada. Prahlad Maharaj wanted to impress upon the sons of the demons that although such knowledge can be understood only by a saintly person like Narad, they should not be disappointed, for if one takes shelter of Narad instead of material teachers, this knowledge is possible to understand. Understanding does not depend upon high parentage. The living entity is certainly pure on the spiritual platform, and therefore anyone who attains the spiritual platform by the grace of the spiritual master can also understand this confidential knowledge. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada, as I mentioned, traveled the world teaching. He never tired to teach. Thousands of lectures, thousands of conversations. At every moment he was teaching Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada had a disciple, Bhavananda Prabhu. So once they were on a morning walk, and so Prabhupada stopped and he looked at Bhavananda Prabhu and he said, "Do you know the meaning of your name?" So he was silent. Garga Muni was next to him. So Garga Muni Prabhu said, "Yes, Bhavananda means one who experiences the happiness of ecstasy. Bhava Ananda." Prabhupada said, "Wrong. That is Bhavananda. But his name is Bhavananda." Prabhupada said the meaning of his name is one who takes bliss in the material world. So he would look completely bewildered. This name sounds more like a curse, one who takes pleasure in the material world. I thought that's what we're trying to escape. So Prabhupada said, "You don't understand the meaning? There is one pleasure available in the material world that's not available even in the spiritual world. And that pleasure is the pleasure of preaching Krishna consciousness. That's a unique pleasure only available in the material world. In the spiritual world, there's no one to preach to because everyone's a pure devotee of Krishna." So Prabhupada was constantly experiencing the bliss of preaching. Prabhupada was a sadhu. He was cutting. Jai Shri Shri Radha Banke Bihari ki jai. And therefore he was always answering people's questions in a very powerful way. But in each one of his answers he was teaching the powerful principles of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada would answer questions in different ways. Once when he arrived at the San Francisco, one reporter asked him, "Why have you come to San Francisco?" Prabhupada said, "Because the rent is very cheap." One time when Prabhupada arrived in America, the reporter asked him, "Why have you come to America?" Prabhupada looked at the Indian reporter and said, "Why have you come to America?" He said, "Swamiji, I came for better opportunities." Prabhupada said, "Me too. But you came for better opportunities to take. I came for better opportunities to give." And when Prabhupada arrived in London, the reporter asked him, "Why have you come to London?" Prabhupada told him, "I've come to teach you what you've forgotten." Everyone is forgetful of Krishna. Krishna bahir mukha hoya bhogavancha kore nikatasta mayatare japati adhare. Krishna bahir mukha. Everyone has turned their face away from Krishna. Hoya bhogavancha kare, and everyone is trying their best, trying so hard to enjoy the material world. But what they don't understand, nikatasta, standing close by, maya tare. Maya is right there, japati adhare, and Maya strikes you down, slaps you down. People are suffering in the world like anything. One time we were having a debate in the Brahmacharya ashram, is football bona fide? So it became a very passionate debate. So everyone brought out their computers. We were looking on Vedabase. Is football bona fide? So someone pulled out a reference. Krishna was playing football in the spiritual world. Krishna plays with the fruits, football. And then someone said, no, here's another reference. Prabhupada said he used to play football. He said he was the goalkeeper because he didn't like running. And then there's another quote of Prabhupada. He says, life is like a game of football. You think you're the player, but actually you're the football. Everyone is just getting kicked around in the material world trying to enjoy. So the teacher comes to teach. So Prabhupada knew how to answer people's questions, no? When in London, the lady reporter came to Prabhupada and asked him, Swamiji, why do you shave your head? Prabhupada looked back at her and said, why do you shave your legs? She was completely shocked. Prabhupada said, we prefer a cool head and warm legs. Cool head and warm legs. You need a cool head to understand spiritual life. One person came to Prabhupada and said, in India the death rate is so high. Prabhupada said the death rate is the same everywhere, 100%. One reporter asked Prabhupada, what would happen if everyone in the world would become Krishna conscious? Prabhupada said, don't worry, there will always be fools like you. One time a reporter in London asked Prabhupada, does Krishna speak Bhagavad Gita on the hellish planets? Prabhupada said, London is hell, don't worry. It's all going on here. Another person asked Prabhupada, Swamiji, is the world flat? It's a big controversy. Is the world flat? Prabhupada said, everywhere I walk is flat. That's all I can say. Everywhere I walk is flat. Another person from Menza asked Prabhupada, can God create a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? Interesting question. Can God create a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? If you say no, then it means God can't create something. And if you say yes, it means there's something God can't lift. So he thought he cornered Prabhupada. So can God create a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? Prabhupada said yes, and then he can lift it. This person was baffled. He didn't know what to say. So Srila Prabhupada, he was so expert in teaching Krishna consciousness. And he was so expert at delivering this philosophy which otherwise is very difficult to understand. Here, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, such knowledge is very difficult to understand. Very difficult. But if you take shelter of a person who's in the line of Narad Muni, then you can understand it. See, knowledge is very, very powerful. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna compares knowledge to different things. So for example, Krishna will say, Sarva Jnana Plaveneva Vrijinam Santarishyasi. Krishna will say, Jnana Plava. Knowledge is like a boat. Because this world is like an ocean full of waves tossing you up and down, the waves of material life. But if you're in the boat of knowledge, you're safe. You're protected. Krishna will later on say in the Gita, Nashayam yatma bhavasto jnana deepena bhashvata. Jnana is like a deepa, is like a lamp. Because the world is very dark, people don't know how to make sense of it all. But if you have transcendental knowledge, then you have vision, you can see. Later on in Gita, Krishna will say, Jnanagni karma dagdanam tamahu pandita buddha. Krishna will say, Jnanagni. Jnana is like a fire. Because right now, everyone is due to receive so much karmic reaction. Everyone. We can't see it, it's invisible, but there's all these karmic reactions sitting on our shoulders that are about to happen. But jnana is like a fire. Because if you understand the knowledge, then the karma has no more purpose. And therefore, jnana can actually burn up all of your karma. And Krishna will also say in the Bhagavad Gita, Tasmad ajnana sambhutam ritstam jnana sinatmana. Jnana is also like a asina, which means a sword. Because there are so many doubts that we have. We have doubts in the philosophy, we have doubts in the movement, we have doubts in the Vaishnavas, we have doubts in ourselves. So jnana ashina, jnana is like a sword which cuts all the doubts. So just see how Krishna is explaining in the Gita. If you get knowledge, is so powerful. It's like a boat. It's like a fire. It's like a sword. It's like a lamp. So many functions knowledge provides someone in their life. But you can only understand all of this knowledge if you approach someone. Jaha Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavera Ekanta Ashraya Kore Chaitanya Charane. Jaha Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavera Sthane. If you want to understand Bhagavatam, you can't do it just by reading books. Not possible. Vaishnavera Sthane. Go close to a Vaishnav. Someone who is a Bhagavata, someone like Srila Prabhupada. Go close to their lotus feet and listen. Listen patiently from the words emanating from their lotus mouth. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Aikya. If you listen to the words coming from the lotus mouth of the Bhagavata, then Om Jnana Timirandhasya, then everything, all the darkness is dispelled. So Srila Prabhupada was a sadhu. A sadhu means one who cuts. Sometimes his words were very, very strong. It's necessary because people are in a big illusion, so sometimes you have to make them uncomfortable. So therefore it's said in Bhagavatam, Tatodu sangamutsrija sadhu satseta buddhiman shanta evasya chindanti manovya sangamuktibi. The words of a saintly person are like a razor. Manovya sangam uktibi. They're so sharp, the words from the mouth of a sadhu, that they can cut all of your material attachments. The Mahabharata says the words of a politician are like butter, but their heart is like a razor. And the words of a sadhu are like a razor, but their heart is like butter. Heart is very soft, but words are sometimes very, very strong. Isn't it? When Prabhupada went to Mumbai, then he went to a rich industrialist's house. He was a big supporter. And Prabhupada asked him, what do you do in the morning? He said, I wake up about 7 or 8 o'clock. And then I have breakfast in bed. This is a great British tradition. They call it breakfast in bed. So he said, Swamiji, I wake up in the morning, Sunday, day of relaxing, breakfast in bed. Prabhupada looked at him and said, what's the difference between you and a pig? The devotees were completely bewildered. They said, Prabhupada, he's our supporter. Prabhupada said, what is the difference between you and a pig? Ahara nidra bhayametunam cha samanametat pashubi shamanaha. All this eating, sleeping, this is animalistic activity. Later on, he said, I respected Prabhupada so much because he was the first person in my life who didn't try to flatter me. Didn't try to just glorify me with some sweet words. A sadhu cuts. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, I don't believe in this philosophy. Tum chup, hum chup. You be quiet, I'll be quiet. I won't disturb you, you don't disturb me. We'll keep it all nice. We'll have a good relationship. He said, I don't believe in this philosophy. When I need to tell someone they're in illusion, I tell them they're in illusion. But I say it from a heart which is full of compassion. Therefore, Prabhupada was speaking out against so many philosophies. Prabhupada was speaking out against atheism. He was disrupting the atheists. So It's not a good philosophy. It just doesn't make philosophical sense. See, atheism doesn't make any sense even logically. Because according to an atheist, there's no God. Am I right? That means, according to an atheist, there's no one in the world who knows everything. Because God knows everything. So the philosophy of an atheist is that there's nobody in the world who's omniscient. Nobody in the world who knows everything. So how can an atheist say for sure that there's no God? Because their very philosophy is there's nobody in the world who knows everything. So how can you say for sure that there's no God? Because that means you don't know everything either. It's not good philosophy. It just makes no sense. So Prabhupada spoke out against atheism. Prabhupada spoke out against impersonalism. You can listen to the morning walks in Mumbai. Prabhupada is shouting at Mr. Patel. He is shouting at him, how can you say God has no eyes? How can you say God has no ears? How can you say God has no form? How can you say you have something that God doesn't have? You have form. And you say God has no form? It makes no sense. Prabhupada exposed that impersonalism is covered atheism. How is it atheism? It is atheism. Because God is here and we are here. And what do atheists do? They bring God down. We are all the same. And what does an impersonalist do? Says we're all God, takes everyone here. Same. Whether you're the same here or whether you're the same here, it's all atheism. Because you remove the distinction. So Prabhupada spoke out against atheism. Prabhupada spoke out about impersonalism. Prabhupada spoke out against casteism. Often devotees wonder, why don't we have a temple in Jagannath Puri? And Prabhupada told the reason why we don't have a temple in Jagannath Puri. Well, we do now, it's coming up. But at that time we didn't. And Prabhupada said, I refuse to go to Jagannath Puri because they don't let non-Indians into the temple. Prabhupada said, this is Jagannath. He's the Lord of the universe. He's not Oriyanath. He's not Purinath. He's the Lord of the universe. Prabhupada wrote a letter to Shyam Sundar, who was in Jagannath Puri. Prabhupada said, until they allow my Western disciples into the Jagannath temple, I will not come there. Because they don't understand the basis of Bhagavata teachings, guna, karma, vibhagasha. One is determined by their activities and by their qualities and their character, not by their janma. And so Prabhupada refused. Prabhupada refused. He said, I will not come there. And he didn't. Later on, he went to Orissa and he established through Govinda Maharaj a temple in Bhubaneswar. But Prabhupada refused. He said, I am speaking out against this. So like this, Prabhupada was speaking out. Prabhupada also spoke out against speciesism. Understand? Speciesism means we think humans deserve some special respect, but all other animals can be killed. Prabhupada spoke out against this so heavy. Prabhupada would meet Catholic priests and he would drill them. Your commandments say thou shalt not kill. But every day some mass slaughter is going on of animals. No one made the connection, but Prabhupada made the connection. If you kill animals, there will be world war. What's the connection? Prabhupada said it's obvious. If you're indiscriminate towards killing an animal, it's just one more step to then say, kill a human, no problem. So like this, Srila Prabhupada was the consummate teacher. He made Krishna consciousness clear. He made Krishna consciousness relevant, and he made Krishna consciousness practical. If you're a teacher, these are the three things you have to do. You have to make the teachings clear. You have to make the teachings relevant. And you have to make the teachings applicable. And so this is what Srila Prabhupada did. And therefore Srila Prabhupada was the living Bhagavata, because his whole life was dedicated to teaching this philosophy. And not just teaching through words, but teaching through example. Acharya. Acharya means one who teaches through their achar. Achar prachar kara karah dui karya, tumi sarva guru tumi jagatera arya. Sanatana Goswami glorifies Haridas Thakur because he says some people speak very well, but they don't practice. And some people practice, but they don't preach. Some people love to preach, but in their private life something else is going on. And some people practice very nicely, but they don't make the effort to share the knowledge with others. Prabhupada said this is kripana. In Gujarati we can also say kanjus. This means you have something, but you don't share. People out there are suffering like anything. We have answers. We have solutions. We have something that can help. How can we not make the effort to go out and try to share that with others? So Sanatana Goswami tells Haridas Thakur, Tumi sarva guru tumi jagatera arya. You are the spiritual master of the whole world because you practice. And at the same time, you preach. You preach through your words, but you also preach through your actions. You preach through your character. And so Srila Prabhupada was such a great example for all of us. He could have just retired. He could have just taken it easy, but he didn't. One final thing. Just to understand Prabhupada's glory. In the 90s, they were trying to shut the manna down, Bhaktivedanta Manna. They were trying to close the temple down. So we hired a lawyer, best lawyer, top lawyer, to defend the temple. So the lawyer came to the devotees and said, I'm about to defend you in the case, but I need to know something about all of you guys. Do you guys have any books? I mean, when you ask Hare Krishna, do you have any books? That's like, whew. So the devotee said, yeah, we have books. Then boom, just gave him everything. Bhagavatam said, boom, all the books to the lawyer. So these lawyers, they're like masterminds. They read for like, this is what they do their whole life. So they can figure things out quickly, just reading everything. So this lawyer, he came back after a few days. And he came to meet Shivaram Swami. Shivaram Swami was the GBC at that time. So the lawyer said, so Shivaram Swami said to the lawyer, did you read it? He said, I read it all. He said, wow, that was quick. He said, did you understand it? He said, I understood it. I get your philosophy. I understand all this. He said, wow. And then the lawyer looked at Shivaram Swami. He says, but I want to tell you something. Your founder, he's amazing. Shivaram Swami said, yeah, I know. He said, you don't know. Shivaram Swami, what do you mean? Like, look at me. Like, I dedicated my life to this. Of course I know how great he is. I've read the same books that you've read. He said, you don't know. He said, how old are you? Shivaram Swami said 45, whatever he was at that time. The person said, I'm 70 years old. You don't know what it feels like to be in the body of a 70-year-old. I'm in the body of a 70-year-old, and I know what it feels like. And for your founder to come to another country with 40 rupees in his pocket at the age of 70, he said, you can't understand what this means. Shivam says, Dandavat. You must be right. So this is very profound. We have to deeply think. What is the sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada made? One time, one disciple of Prabhupada, he was in Vrindavan and he was giving a class. So in Vrindavan, many times people are talking about esoteric things. So someone asked a question about Gopi Bhav. Gopi Bhav. So this devotee on the Vyasasana, he said, Gopi Bhav? You want to know about Gopi Bhav? He said, Gopi Bhav, if you want to understand what Gopi Bhav is, Gopi Bhav means at 70 years old, you get on a ship with no money, you have 2 heart attacks, you arrive in a foreign land, and you go under a tree, you start chanting Hare Krishna, and you try to bring people to Krishna's lotus feet. That is Gopi Bhav. Gopi Bhav doesn't mean some amorous pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan. Gopi Bhav means someone who's fearless, someone who's flexible, someone who's fully available, and someone who makes the full sacrifice to give pleasure to Krishna. That is Gopi Bhav. So therefore, Prabhupada is the most confidential devotee of the Lord. Prabhupada is the consummate teacher of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada made all the sacrifices. And if we're grateful, the Sanskrit word for gratitude is Krita Gya. Gya means to know, and Krita means what has been done. So if one is actually grateful, they will know what has been done for them, and they'll reciprocate with that. By fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's order, by fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's dreams. And what was Srila Prabhupada's dream? Jare dekha, dare kaha, Krishna upadesh, amara agyaya, guru tara e desh. Wherever you go, tell people about Krishna, expand this movement, and create an ISKCON, which is a house in which the whole world can live. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So thank you so much. Have a few minutes if anyone has any questions, I think you'd like to ask, any comments. Yes, we're at the back.
Hare Krishna, Swami. My question is, yesterday you said you get money with integrity and spend it with generosity. Now I'm going to give 2 situations. For you have a friend, you've known each other for about 10 years. Then you are the generous one, and they do not reciprocate that. And when they do, it's a little bit, So you tend to develop a mindset that maybe they are not really your friend, Maybe they are not 100% your friend, Do you continue being generous because you don't want to lose this friend because of material things, And also another situation, considering a village where we have poor people, then one of them makes it, then the village will depend on them, on this person. This person can be generous, but the resources that he has is also limited. Up to what point can he be generous? Does he give everything so that?
Okay, so yesterday I was talking about spending with generosity, but what about if you're giving and people are not appreciating and they're taking advantage? So how does generosity work? Generosity doesn't mean that you lose your intelligence. When Prabhupada came to America, every single dollar that he spent, he wrote it in a book and he took account of it. Prabhupada was very, very careful that not $1 of the Krishna consciousness movement should be wasted. Lakshmi is owned by Krishna. Lakshmi is meant to be engaged in the service of Krishna. Therefore, Lakshmi is very, very sacred. And therefore, it should be used appropriately. So generosity doesn't mean to lose your intelligence and give your money to people who may misuse it. For example, we go on the street, people are suffering. So what do? Do we give them money? Oftentimes we don't give them money because they may not utilize the money appropriately. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, you should always give something. He actually said, when you see a beggar, you should always give something. Doesn't mean you give money, but you should always give something, because if you don't, your heart will become very hard. And if your heart is hard, how can you love Krishna? So therefore, there are different ways to be generous. Giving all your money to someone is not always the most relevant way to be generous. So be generous in heart. A devotee is always magnanimous because Mahaprabhu is magnanimous. Namo Maha Vadanyaya. But use your intelligence to understand how to be generous in an appropriate way. And sometimes that may mean not giving them money. Sometimes it may mean giving them good advice. That's also generosity. Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So Maharaj, we see that Srila Prabhupada, he spoke strongly. So sometimes in the community, we find that when someone speaks strongly, it's taken as fault finding. And sometimes there's not so much appreciation. So what are some of the things that we can do in the community to build this love, so that even when there is some strong speech, people don't get offended?
Vajradapi kathorani mriduni kusumadapi lokataranam chetamshi konu vigyatum ishvaraha. Shastra explains what is a Vaishnav. Vajradapi, stronger than a thunderbolt. Kusumadapi, softer than a rose. Oftentimes we're all harder than a thunderbolt. What happened to the rose? What happened to the kindness? What happened to the generosity? Yes, Prabhupada was a sadhu, Prabhupada was cutting, Prabhupada was smashing everyone. That same Prabhupada in 26 2nd Avenue was going to the market, buying all the vegetables, cutting all the vegetables, cooking all the vegetables, serving all the hippies, cleaning up after them and not asking for anything in return. That same Prabhupada, who was the world Acharya, when one Mataji came to offer flowers in a gathering of hundreds of devotees, Prabhupada saw that she didn't have proper clothes and she was having a cold. Prabhupada called her over and said, why don't you have proper clothes? Why haven't you been provided the basics? That was his kindness. We tend to pick the parts of Srila Prabhupada that we like, the parts of Srila Prabhupada that fulfill my opinions or what I want to do. But we don't see Srila Prabhupada as a whole. So Prabhupada was surely stronger than a thunderbolt, but Prabhupada was also softer than a rose. He was so kind. My favorite picture of Prabhupada is when Srila Prabhupada is in the house of the Agarwals. When he first arrives in America, and Sally Agarwal, she has a son, and the son's name is Bridge. And there's this beautiful picture where Prabhupada is playing with the son, and for the first time the son is walking. And if you see Prabhupada's eyes, he's in ecstasy. This small kid is walking for the first time. On one hand, you can think this is the Acharya, he's in the spiritual world, he's like the, what does this small kid mean to him? Prabhupada is so happy, he's so human, he's so kind, he's such a person. Sali Agarwal said, Bridge, he loved Prabhupada so much, the little boy, that he used to call Prabhupada Swami Jesus. Even the kid understood. The kid didn't hear any philosophy from Prabhupada. The kid just felt the love of Prabhupada and said, Swami Jesus. He's the Jesus. So, without kindness, what kind of movement are we? Without personalism, what kind of movement are we? Without soft hearts, real community, what kind of movement are we? Oftentimes in our temples, we walk around, we don't even say hello to each other. Oftentimes we're in a temple together, we don't even know each other's names. It's amazing. Here we are preaching to the world. Prabhupada built a house in which the whole world can live. We have to show that kindness, that generosity, that personalism with each other. Otherwise, it's all words. So we should take Prabhupada as a whole. Prabhupada was very kind, very soft. But when he needed to speak heavy, he was heavy. See, a sadhu cuts, but a sadhu is like a surgeon, right? Does a surgeon cut? Yes. But the surgeon doesn't just bring you into the operating theater, put you onto the table and first start cutting you up. First they speak to you, they give you a bit of a consultation, they maybe give you some anesthetic, and then maybe they cut. And after they cut, they stitch it up, they put a plaster on it. I mean, there's some things that you also do around the cutting. The sole job of a surgeon is not just to cut you up. So therefore, Prabhupada was an expert surgeon. Surgeon must cut, but he does a whole bunch of things around that which makes the cut effective. So we shouldn't just become a cutting movement. Just cut each other up, blast each other, smash each other. Prabhu, surrender. It's a movement of love. Be kind. Yes, Prabhu at the back.
So, Rabbi Shamaraj, thank you so much for the wonderful class. So recently I came across something interesting. I was trying to correlate it to something from the Bhagavad Gita. So we find that in life we have got so much suffering and miseries, and most of it comes from our desires. So I've been trying to understand the cause of all the desires and everything. So in the Bhagavad Gita we are told that we have got different species of human beings, and most of it comes from the level of our consciousness. Okay, that's what I was told about it. So this person was talking about the different types of people and how they acquire knowledge, how they utilize it in life. So he was talking about idealistic people. These are people, when they get knowledge, they take it the way it is, they try to apply it, and they take it 100%. And especially if you see things like relationship, spirituality, and career-wise. So these are people who take it like if it's in a relationship, they believe in true love or something like that. Then you have got pragmatic people. These are people who are practical in their endeavors and in the acquisition of knowledge. So to some extent, each and every knowledge they acquire, they try to look at the practicality of it. And you have got realistic people who will fall between pragmatic and idealistic. But you're saying at the highest level of acquisition of knowledge, people tend to come to be idealistic in their knowledge. So that means it can be like an informed idealism. So is it the right path? Because I've tried to correlate it as I interact with different people, and I see some truth in it. Is it the right way of looking at life and acquisition of knowledge? Or
Yeah, thank you so much. So there is the idealistic, there is the pragmatic, there is the realistic. They seem to all be different approaches to knowledge. So where do we stand in Krishna consciousness? How do we understand all of these? In one sense, a devotee is all three. Here we are in the Bhagavatam class and we're speaking from the Bhagavatam. So naturally we're speaking the ideals. We don't water down this philosophy. There's an ideal. And we have to understand that the ideal is always there. So a devotee is an idealistic in the sense that they know where we're ultimately trying to go to. But a devotee is realistic, knowing where I am at the moment. And a devotee is also pragmatic because they know how I'm going to go from the real to the ideal. So if you ask me, should we be idealistic, realistic, or pragmatic? I'm going to tell you we should be all three. You should be idealistic in the sense that you know where you're trying to go. You should be realistic in the sense of knowing where I am right now. And you should be pragmatic in the sense of knowing how I'm going to go from where I am to where I need to be. And that's why you learn how to be an idealist, a realist, and a pragmatist in the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, not just by reading, but by accepting, as is said in this verse, accepting the representative of Narada, the Vaishnavas, and understanding how to apply the knowledge according to their direction. And so there's elements of all three of these in our adoption of knowledge. We don't compartmentalize them. We say that all of these have a role to play. We have to be idealistic, realistic, and pragmatic, and we have to be able to hold all three of those positions simultaneously, and that is done by taking guidance from the bona fide representative of the parampara. Is that okay? All right, yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is, how can, me as a devotee, how can I know I'm on the right path?
So the Bhagavatam explains what should happen when you're practicing Krishna consciousness and you're practicing on the path correctly. Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktir anyatra chesha trika eka kalaha prapadyamanasya yathashnata shustusti pustikshud apayonughasham. So this verse says, when you eat food, three things happen. Tushti, you feel some pleasure. Pushti, you feel some energy, nourishment. Kshud apayo, you feel freedom from hunger. When you eat, these three things happen. So what this verse says, if you're on the right path of Krishna consciousness, if you're on the right path of spirituality, if you're practicing correctly, the first thing that should happen is you should be becoming happier. If you're miserable, you're on the wrong path. You should be becoming happier, right? The devotee can't go out in the street and give a chant and be happy to someone and look miserable. The person will look back at you and say, maybe you need to read this book first and then come back to me later, right? Become happy. Okay, yes, there are ups and downs, there are difficulties, but overall, you should feel happier in your life. Pushti means you should feel the presence of God. Once Prabhupada was on a morning walk and he asked the devotees, how do you know Krishna exists? So one devotee said, because you said, Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, I could be cheating you. Prabhupada said, the Shastra says it. But the Shastra could be wrong. And then one devotee said, I know Krishna exists because when I chant Hare Krishna, I feel the presence of Krishna. Prabhupada said, that's the right answer. One should feel the presence of Krishna. Second thing. And third thing, just like when you feel freedom from hunger, when you eat, if you're on the right path, you should feel a detachment from material things. Everything else that tempted you before, everything else that attracted you before, gradually that attraction, that temptation should become weaker and weaker and weaker. So if you want to know if you're on the right path, you're practicing, you should be becoming happy. You should be feeling the presence of Krishna in your life, and you should be becoming more detached from material things. If those three things are happening, you're on the right path and you're practicing well. If they're not happening, then maybe we all need to look at whether we're practicing properly. Is that okay? Okay. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is, at what point do we draw the line in offering positive criticisms, or like just offering criticisms to devotees and being mean? Like some people are just mean.
Offering criticism or taking it? Which one? Offering it.
Yeah.
A loving offering of criticism.
Yeah, and being mean.
First thing is, before we offer loving criticism, we should ask ourselves, who's criticizing me in my life? Nobody is qualified to offer feedback, to offer criticism to others, unless in their life there are people who are offering them criticism and offering them feedback. If your sole job description is only to give feedback to others, but you're not receiving it, it's not a good situation. So therefore, Prabhupada was the teacher. He was giving a lot of positive feedback to many people in the world. But Prabhupada also, his spiritual master defeated him. Prabhupada said, my spiritual master defeated me. He criticized me. He exposed me. So therefore, even the greatest teacher like Srila Prabhupada had someone criticizing him. What to speak of Srila Prabhupada, even Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had someone criticizing him, because when he went to Ishvarapuri, what did Ishvarapuri, his spiritual master, tell him? Murkha tumi tomar nahek vedanta dikar, Krishna mantra japa sada ei mantra sar. When Mahaprabhu, who's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, goes to his spiritual master says, relax, you're a fool. So if Mahaprabhu can take feedback, criticism, we should also. So that's the first thing. Make sure we're getting feedback. Second thing is, before you offer any feedback to anyone, ask yourself, have I got the information right? Oftentimes we don't even have the right information. We haven't taken the time to even understand, is this really the right information? Second thing is, even if you have the right information, you have to ask yourself, am I the right person? Even if you're the right person, the next thing you have to ask yourself is this the right time? And even if it's the right time, you have to ask yourself, do I have the right motivation? Do I really want to help them? A good measure is, don't offer anyone feedback unless you're willing to help them improve. What's the point of going around giving people feedback when we don't actually really want them to improve? So we should have the right information, we should be the right person, we should do it at the right time, and we should have the right motivation. Otherwise, you may be magnanimously giving feedback, and in the process we might be damaging our own spiritual life. because maybe that's not the service we're meant to be doing. Because when you give feedback, what you're doing is you're putting yourself on a higher level and putting someone else on a lower level. You have to be very careful, because that can bring a pride, and pride cometh before the fall. So we should be careful. Okay, maybe last question. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. So I have two questions. First one is, according to most religions, the best description that is given of maybe Golok Vrindavan or the spiritual world, it's meant to be perfect. And one of the goals of Krishna consciousness is to bring us to that path where we can be able to go back to Golok Vrindavan. But one time, like we were already there, and then we had the desire. So isn't this place supposed to be perfect? But that aspect of where does that desire come from? And I'm trying to go back there. So does that mean there also be
The potentiality to come back.
going
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fall of the jiva at 9:15. Prabhu, you've opened a big topic. A topic which has been discussed for generations, and a topic on which Vaishnavas have different opinions. See, Srila Prabhupada generally explained that we have free will. Right? Of course we have free will, because if you don't have free will, how can you love someone? So in order for love to exist, there must be free will. So if we exist in a loving relationship with Krishna, it doesn't mean there's no free will. Free will still exists. So even if we're in a loving relationship with Krishna in the spiritual world, free will means we always have the possibility to turn away from the spiritual world. Now your question is, if Goloka is perfect, why would we ever decide to turn away? The way Srila Prabhupada usually explains it is, he says we had a curiosity. It's not that we were dissatisfied, it's not that we had an argument with Krishna, it's not that we got fried out because there's too much service. We were just curious. What would it be like? So then we turned away, looked in the other direction. So Krishna, he has to honor your free will. So then he creates a world where you can try it out. So here we are, trying it out. Krishna says, Yad gatva na nivartante. Once you go back, you never come back again. In English they say, once bitten, twice shy. So that's generally how Prabhupada explained it. We were in the spiritual world and we came here to explore, and then we go back. But I'll just say one final thing, why you can't talk about this in normal English language. I'll try to explain to you. It's a little technical, just be with me. Earth planet is here, okay? So there's a time scale. As you go higher in the universe, time dilates. Understand? Dilation of time. So when you get to Brahmaloka, one day on Brahmaloka is like 6 months on the Earth planet, because time dilates. As you get to the edge of the material universe and you go into the spiritual universe, there's no more time. Material world is a place of time. Spiritual world, no time. So now my question to you is, can you ever leave a place which has no time? If you say yes, I'll ask you when. So can you ever leave a place which has no time? In one sense, no. Can you ever re-enter a place which has no time? In one sense, no. So did you leave the spiritual world? Yes. Did you leave the spiritual world? No. Does that make logical sense? No. So we try to make it like a narrative. We were in the spiritual world, then we fell, then we came to ISKCON Nairobi, then we perfected our spiritual life, then we went back. But you can't speak of it as one narrative, because you're trying to create a narrative between two realities which are in different time dimensions. Understand? You can't create a linear narrative to weave together a story of two different places which function in different time dimensions. That's why language fails. Some things you can't understand through language. Like, for example, who comes first, the father or the son? It's not a trick question. The father. Wrong. Because until the son is born, is he a father? No. So the son comes first. So I could make a statement, the father comes before the son. True. I could make another statement, the son comes before the father. True. And then someone will come and say, but how can they both be true? That's a contradiction. The point is, English language has limitation in terms of how you can understand concepts which are multidimensional. Therefore, some topics you can't logically decode. Some topics you have to understand are beyond the limits of the human intellect. And the fall of the jiva is one such issue. So anyway, Prabhupada said, when the house is burning, just get out. When the house is burning, you don't start looking around for where the source of the fire came from. Priority, get out. Other things later. Alright? Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.